think that smoothed it out, Justin.
Good.
Hey, I got one for you. Here's a question I've been thinking about.
Yep.
What happens when someone says that I'm in a cult because I believe the King James Bible is the Word of God?
So he said that to you?
Yeah.
Well, join the club. I mean, it's about time it had to happen sometime. But think about this, Justin. They're calling you, saying you're in a cult because you believe there's a perfect Bible on this earth. Now, let me ask you a question. The person that said you were in a cult, do they believe that salvation is by grace?
Yeah.
Do they believe that Jesus Christ was born of a virgin?
Yeah.
They believe he was sinless,
Sure.
God in the flesh.
Yeah.
He was crucified. 3 days later, he rose from the dead.
Yeah.
They believe that everything we believe. If you put these things on a piece of paper, Justin, you'd have them and us checking yes on all the same boxes except one. And that one box is that God has a perfect Bible on this earth. And the fact is, if you talk to him, ask him, do you believe there's a perfect Bible on this earth? And they'll say yes. Ask him to show it to you, put it in your hand, and all of a sudden it evaporates. It doesn't exist anywhere. And it embarrasses them that we say the Bible's perfect and can put it in your hand. So they have to call us a cult to try to marginalize us and take the pressure off of them.
Gotcha. Sure.
Hey, how about hand me the air cleaner? Sure. Justin, I've got to go see the preacher this afternoon. Why don't you just go with me? We'll jump in this thing. We'll go on over there and see him. And I'll let you bounce your question off of him, mainly because I don't mind answering your questions, but it's good for you to get answers from more than one place. You know, one of the things about a cult is they've always got one grand poobah who answers all the questions.
Huh.
And I don't want to be that to you. I'd like you to hear what a pastor has to say. We'll jump in this, and you can bounce that off of him, okay?
Sounds good.
All right. Hey, preacher, how you doing?
Good to see you, Brother Gip.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Doc. Hey, listen, this is my friend Justin, and this is Pastor DeMichael.
Good to meet you, Justin.
Nice to meet you, I'm Justin.
You bet.
Pastor's been pastoring here about 30 years. He's built several buildings on the property. He's got a successful church, good church. But anyway, Justin's been looking at the issue of God having a perfect Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And because he actually believes God does have one, he's now been called a cultist.
Oh, sure.
I wanted him to hear it from somebody else, and I thought a pastor would be a real good viewpoint. So maybe you could answer some of his questions.
Sure. You got a couple minutes?
Sure, you
All
betcha.
right. So you've been accused of being part of a cult.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, one of the oldest tactics in the book. It's a form of rock throwing. And basically it's used by people that don't have strong arguments. And it's used to intimidate. It's used to get you off the trail, make you fearful. If you notice out in the world, if a politician gets in a bad spot, he'll call his opponent a racist. And that works pretty well out in the world. Here in the Boise, Idaho area, we're in the middle of Mormon country. One of the principal characteristics of a cult is an extravagant admiration for a man. In the case of Mormonism, that would be Joseph Smith. And then you have a salvation that's exclusive to an organization. You have to join our church, our system, in order to be saved. And then probably more to our discussion than anything else is the idea of multiple final authorities. When the Mormon missionary comes to your door, he'll talk to you about the Bible, and he'll say he believes the Bible. But in reality, it's bait and switch. He really wants to get you to the Book of Mormon. So they have dual authorities. Are you familiar with the period of time in church history called the Dark Ages?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
During that time, the Roman Catholic Church in Europe would intimidate the reformers by calling them things like Lutherans, meaning you're following Martin Luther. In other words, they were saying anybody that broke away from the Catholic Church to become a reformer could be part of a cult. They did the same with John Calvin, and they called them Calvinists. Of course, who really was part of a cult? When you consider the way the Roman Catholic Church venerates the Pope and calls him the Vicar of Christ, really sounds like the pot's calling the kettle black.
Yeah.
Justin, those that are accusing you of being part of a cult, do they believe in the Bible the way we do as Bible believers? In other words, it's perfect, there's no errors in it? Or would they suggest that there are errors in the Bible?
They think there's some errors.
Okay. Stop and think about it for a second. They're saying you're part of a cult for believing in the final authority of a perfect book. but then they're standing in judgment of that book. As a student of the Word of God, we submit ourselves to a perfect book. When someone says there's mistakes in it, then they're inferring that they know what those mistakes are and how to correct them. It almost puts them in the place of the Word of God.
Right. Justin, think about this. When you arrive at your final conclusion, do you want to have arrived there because you were drawn there by the truth, or you were driven there by somebody calling you a name? That's exactly what this is. You're not believing what they want you to believe, so they're going to call you a name. You know, where the pastor and I went to college, we went years apart. And everybody's got something critical to say about some school or some man of God. But when he graduated, the president of the college said this: when you leave here, you take your authority with you under your arm, talking about the Bible. You don't need me, and you don't need this school. Now, how many Bible colleges do you think would be brave enough today to tell their student body that?
For that matter, Justin, when I preach here in the pulpit at Treasure Valley Baptist Church, I tell the people my authority only goes so far as the Bible itself. So where I'm consistent with the Bible, then I have authority. If I get outside of it, I tell them they really shouldn't even believe what I'm saying. And that when they go home, they take the authority of God with them. They bring it home in their vehicle. They put it on their coffee table. They open it up the next morning and have devotions from it. And they're not dependent upon me because I know Greek and I know Hebrew, and I've convinced them somehow that they can't have the perfect Word of God in their language. They got to come to me to understand the spiritual hieroglyphics. You see, at our church and among Bible believers, we want people to have the authority of God with them because that's how God intended it. We talked a little bit about church history. One of the great things about the Protestant Reformation was not only the idea of justification by faith, but the priesthood of all believers. During that period of time, it seemed that most people in Europe believed that truth was locked up with the priest and with the church, and that the lay people not only couldn't have the Word of God, but that it was vested solely in the priest. If we go back to that sort of thing, where does that leave us? Where does that leave people? If they're convinced that they have mistakes in their Bible, and I have to correct those mistakes for them, who then really is leading a cult?